maybe we just don't think Tony Stark is the cold exec with a heart of steel, because he sure is stingy with who he armors up. Clint Barton is highly trained since childhood in a number of relevant skills that make him a lethal super spy and a remarkably accurate marksman with a wide array of trick arrows. But he still gets grief as just the archer in a team full of superheroes. At least one other person that comes to the table sans superpowers could give the guy who has lived his life as a weapon a bit of an evener. So why hasn't Tony Stark hooked Hawkeye up with some armor of his own? Corporate espionage and the stealing of secrets is a big deal even in a world without superheroes and supervillains. Sometimes secrets are more about the idea of it being secret than it being truly sensitive material. Just the idea that the recipe of Coca-Cola is a secret, or that we don't know specifically what herbs and spices go into KFC, is enough to make them both seem worth copying and something that can't be replicated. In a world of superheroes and supervillains though, corporate secrets can be a pretty big deal, especially if those secrets power a suit of armor that can privatize world peace. When Tony Stark was the world's leading manufacturer of the things that go boom, Tigra and Bunny's favorite things, his main rival, who subtly is for Clyde's, Justin Hammer, managed to replicate Tony's arrogance and bravado, but not his genius. For that, he instead deploys questionable ethics. It was those questionable ethics that resulted in Hammer acquiring through nefarious means a key chipset that made Iron Man armor possible, and then quietly sold it to the good guys and bad guys alike. This is something Tony discovered when taking down an armored challenger thinking they could handle Iron Man. They could not. This discovery led to Tony making a neutralizer that would disable the chip no matter what side of the good guy bad guy spectrum you were on, because Tony figured having this technology in the hands of anyone other than him was simply too dangerous. This led to the Armor Wars, which Rhodey will experience on Disney Plus in the coming year. Arrogant or practical, no matter how you slice it, Tony doesn't like his tech getting too far out of his control, especially when it comes to organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D., which would make him reluctant to give proprietary tech to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s rogue Golden Boy. No doubt when Hawkeye premieres on November 24th, we'll get a few more details about the MCU past of the brooding marksman. So far, all we know is that he helped Natasha defect while trying to kill off the leader of the Red Room, and that he has a no longer secret family life on a farm somewhere. Ink and Paper Clint Barton has a pretty colorful past. It starts with his brother training him how to protect himself from his abusive father before losing both of his parents in a car accident. There's nothing more dangerous in comics than being the parent of a future superhero. Clint and his brother then lived the dream of every 1930s kid, or so old movies have told me, and ran off and joined the circus, where he developed his trick shots as well as acrobatics. But since this is the Marvel Universe, it wasn't just an ordinary circus. I mean, it's a reality where there's an actual supervillain who runs his own circus and Roman carnival that had the spirit of vengeance doing their globe of death stunts and didn't even know it. Clint's secret circus sauce came in the form of Swordmaster and Trickshot. It's pretty easy to piece together what their particular niches are. As it turns out, the young circus performer being trained by low-level supervillains took some inspiration by none other than Iron Man himself to go the colorful costume and crime-fighting route, only to end up hanging out with a pre-defection Black Widow and getting up to no good before reforming and joining the Avengers and eventually S.H.I.E.L.D. The MCU at the very least puts the S.H.I.E.L.D. horse before the Avengers cart, but the end result is the same. Clint Barton's special sauce when it comes to taking down baddies is a result of highly practiced fine motor skills and a rather remarkable level of hand-eye coordination. It's the kind of thing that develops not just from inherent talent. Talent is just the starting place. After that comes hours and hours of work honing that talent until your muscles replicate all those fine motor skills reliably and with precision, without much thought put into it. A suit, even one with the kind of neurointuitiveness that Tony Stark can build, can replicate precision in a repeatable way, but it can't match the fine-tuning that someone who is trained is capable of. Which is to say that we could develop a robot that could accurately shoot a bow and arrow under specific conditions, but not one that could adapt and adjust on the fly with the same speed and accuracy that someone who has trained like Barton can. This means that while Barton would benefit from boosted strength, speed, and defenses, he would lose the part of him that makes him unique. Those honed archer, acrobat, and fighting skills that Tony doesn't have, and uses the suit to overcome that. Contrary to the comic book counterpart's inspiration, the relationship between Barton and Stark hasn't necessarily been the tightest. Stark is related mostly to his science bros Banner, and later on with his young recruit and fellow genius, Peter Parker. As much as Tony Stark's whole sense of self is built around him being the smartest guy in the room, all those smarts are kind of worthless if no one knows what the heck you're talking about. Not that his science bros relationship is without its challenges. Banner not only isn't as reckless as Stark, he can't afford to be. Banner's excess when it comes to science without precaution resulted in a massive wrecking machine. This is part of a larger pattern with even Tony's friends finding him sketchy at best.
This could have been avoided if you hadn't played with something you don't understand.
Sorry. Even Pepper finds him exhausting. If even his friends find him tough to deal with, imagine dealing with him when he's only a work buddy. Over on the jock side of the team, they've had even more difficulty dealing with Tony, including opposing Stark and Banner's science project, creating not one, but 2 advanced self-aware superbots, and signing off on the Sokovia Accords. For his part, Barton came prepackaged with a long friendship between him and the Black Widow. You know, now that we know what happened in Budapest, Barton was right. An alien invasion does seem like an odd comparison to hiding out in a cubbyhole until the heat blows off. That reflects a long friendship after a short romance for the pair in the comics.
Just like Budapest all over again!
You and I remember Budapest very differently.
He formed a respect for Thor when, after being stripped of his worthiness powers, he still managed a good showing trying to get his hammer back. But his biggest new friendship for the team is also a source of more than a little animosity between the Archer and the armor-suited hero. The Maximoff twins didn't need a lot of help finding a reason to hate Tony Stark. His brand name was on the bomb that didn't go off because Wanda had a hereditary title she didn't know about yet. After being used by both Hydra and then Ultron, Wanda had a bit of a crisis. It was Hawkeye that pointed out that sitting on a flying city fighting killer robots with arrows was bonkers. But more importantly, he gave Wanda a choice. She could sit it out and he'd protect her, or she could join the fray and become an Avenger. When Tony finally got a little precious about the power everyone was wielding, he got extra protective of the one person whose power no one, not even her, understood. Tony put Wanda on soft house arrest with an android who had developed a crush on her. Finding out that the young woman he got to trust the Avengers was being held prisoner by them was enough to bring him out of retirement and join Team Cap. That ended with both Wanda and Clint being held prisoner on the raft, with Clint mocking Stark's role as a futurist. It's safe to say if Tony doesn't trust people with his tech, Barton doesn't trust Stark with much of anything. If you've ever played a role-playing game where you have to form a team with other players, you've at least on one occasion encountered that guy who makes sure that all the slots are filled. Who's our tank? Who's our healer? Who's in charge of buffs? They assemble a team of adventurers like they were using sabermetrics. That's the math nerd approach to baseball. The Avengers aren't just divided between nerds and jocks. Thor and Hulk are the big guns, the two that Thunderbolt Ross compared to nuclear warheads. Cap and Stark are also heavy hitters, just not on the level of an Asgardian and the living embodiment of rage. Instead, Captain America brings leadership, and Stark, technical innovation, while both being the most visible members of the team. Barton and Romanoff are the sneaky part of the original team, stealth and infiltration. Expanding the team, there's War Machine, a heavy weapons version of Iron Man. Falcon is a guy who can fly, but no one seems to give him so much as a helmet. Ant-Man and the Wasp are size adjustable, and Wanda. Wanda is her own thing, all of which is to say that the techno-powered niche is covered on the team, and turning Hawkeye into another heavy foot would be redundant. It's not just the samesies that redundancy brings to the teams. This also brings a problem that relates to the first point regarding the armor wars. People with the same source of power have the same vulnerabilities. While Tony Stark is a genius, as Rocket points out, he's only a genius on Earth. The Avengers will end up fighting other geniuses as well. Geniuses that might be able to come up with their own tech that will nullify Iron Man's armor. And if everyone not an Asgardian or science experiment gone wrong is wearing the same tech, then the entire team is vulnerable. Forget the armor. Stark should have built Barton Vantastic, the self-aware super tech van that could also transform into a mech. Who says Luis is the only one who gets a cool van? Bring Vantastic to the MCU! Vantastic puts life in van life.